to welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Matt Henderson, and I'm a project consultant on the Energy and Manufacturing in Appalachia project. And today's webinar is an example of some of the outreach we do working with manufacturers across the region, helping them to understand the supply chain opportunities. And then today specifically, we're going to be talking about AI data centers, focused on the advanced cooling and thermal management for data centers. So we're pleased to have with us today Dr. Deborah Stein. Debbie has is writing 4 reports. This is the 3rd in the series. So I did drop the link in the chat pod where you can download this report, but it also take you to the website where you see the additional reports that have been authored, as well as other supply chain segments that we've been focusing on. So would ask you if you have any questions to put those in the Q&A pod, and we'll cover as many as we can at the end of the webinar or throughout it if it's relevant. So with that, again, just to take a look at the website, the upcoming webinars, you see we do have a few more supply chain webinars, RNG from biodigesters on the 16th, and then geothermal, and the 4th in the series, AI data centers on structural steel. So we're pleased to have with us today, as mentioned, Dr. Deborah Stein, who is the founder of the Science and Technology Policy Academy, which provides independent consulting, policy analysis, program evaluation, freelance writing, teaching, and coaching, a number of things. Dr. Stein has had a good long history or long career. Her full bio is on their website, but she's been involved in various things such as the Obama White House as executive director of the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. So I believe we're in great hands here with Debbie. So with that, Debbie, I'd like to turn it over to you, and thank you again for putting these reports together and for today's presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And hi also to all of you who got to meet in person yesterday at the big AI data center event that Catalyst that hosted along with the Pittsburgh Technology Council. These are the sort of the 3 reports. Just as a reminder, the goal of this project is to provide support for small and medium-sized manufacturers who are interested in providing components for the potential market opportunity presented by AI data centers. The one after this one is on structural steel, racking, so forth. That will be in November. If memory serves. But today, what we're talking about is advanced cooling and thermal management for AI data centers. And so I always like to start with bringing you to what's actually happening in this world outside of buy things in terms of the news. So here's some of the concerns that people have about data centers, water use. Water use is related to cooling, as is energy. So this is I thought an example. So even though this happened in Georgia, since I do a lot of work in West Virginia, I know that there's a lot of people who run on wells, right? And here the concern is that the water that is used by this big data center in Georgia impacted the ability of this nearby homeowner to use for water in their home for dishwashing, ice makers, and their pool, everything else did. So that's one thing people worry about is the impact of water consumption on home services if they rely on wells. The other aspect of it, and this is for other parts of the country, like in Texas and in the West, they really have water shortages. We don't have water shortages as much in this part of the country. But what that means is that's another reason why this part of the country is a possibility. Like why people say, oh, okay, well, maybe we should go here to Appalachia to locate data centers, is because there are readily available sources of water. But that also can pose challenges as well. So this are some articles from Ohio that talk about concerns about the Great Lake, and also in Pennsylvania, due to AI and the need for water from these resources. This is like in West Virginia, there's concerns because you can see here that that the data centers use enough for a town of 10,000 to 50,000 people. West Virginia towns are not that big, right? So if they really use that water, then it can really have a possible impact on water demand, particularly if they use clean drinking water. So that's what raises concerns in places like West Virginia, besides the issue related to the wells. Uh, but and also in Maryland, then we have the Chesapeake Bay region and the things that go into the Chesapeake Bay, the water that runs into it. And people are concerned about water impact there as well. This last one here on this page is, I just thought this is kind of interesting, where they had sort of informational session, and it shows how policymakers can talk about these things, where they talk about the water needed for cooling data centers, but that the conversation took a positive turn uh, when they noted that the data center was aware of water conservation needs, and they were using some recycled water from treatment plants and air cooling systems, some of the gray water options and things like that. So this is another, I think, interesting case study. This is in New York State. And you'll see here that this is a power plant. Well, it was a power plant, and they're looking at converting it to a data center. And I thought this was interesting because a couple things, which is first, we kind of forget sometimes about noise, but this is one of the things that they're concerned about in some of these quieter, like, country kind of areas. They're concerned about the noise of the fans and things like that that are used for cooling. And then the other impact they were concerned with is when the power plant was originally built, um, people were kind of happy because it led to more fish because of the warm water that was going into the lake. But with the data center, in this case, they're planning to, recirculate it or evaporate it, and so there's like less water. So, there's lots of kind of challenges, opportunities, things like that related to data centers. But it's important to know that, energy is a big issue, water is a big issue as well, and then the use, the need for cooling and water is also related to energy. So today, again, we're going to talk about how advanced cooling and thermal management support the data centers, what you should know, talk about some of the components, the resources, and then we'll get to questions. You're also welcome to post questions as we go along in chat, and then I'll answer them at the end. So the data cooling market is growing. You can see here it's increasing at a rapid rate. It's a relatively complicated space compared to some of the other aspects of it. So this is different ways that the market can be broken down. Uh, so the first is just by the cooling technology. So one of the comments that I thought was really good at yesterday's event was somebody said, okay, well, we remember that the idea about going into freezing data centers, that were just cooled by, just like our homes, right? By the air conditioning that's used in our homes. And uh, that's changing. So it's become a bit more focused. So sometimes what's happening is the cooling is not going to in the room as a whole, but directly to the chip. And sometimes it's a mix of both cooling that's in the room as well as to the chip directly. Sometimes like it'll vary by the system location, right? So sometimes it's entire rooms, sometimes it's the cooling units are between rows of servers, sometimes it's integrated actually into the rack of servers. And again, sometimes it goes directly to the chip itself. And then the other, another factor that influences this is the density. So that is basically how much power is within those racks. So you have low racks that are less than 5, then you have mediums that are 5 to 9, and then you have like greater than 9. So what we are primarily talking about is this high rack density solutions that use cooling solutions. And those cooling solutions don't always include water, but it includes other liquids besides water as well. And so this is sort of how the market breaks down. I think that I would view this as an ever-changing um, activity because it's something it's going to vary greatly from data center to data center. So these are predictions from one analyst that talk about these different types of technologies and what the markets are. But it's constantly evolving as people try to come up with new technologies to respond to this challenge. So why do we have it? Data center cooling, thermal management. It's a couple things. And most of you are probably watching this, like I'm watching this or giving this webinar now on my Mac, right? And we all know that just with the computers that we use, how much heat is generated. Um, and we also know that, like every once in a while, I make the mistake on a hot day of leaving my iPhone in the car and I come out and it stopped working because it says, oh, it's too hot, right? So just imagine that like a million times over um, for the computers that are being used in these data centers. And that's really where cooling and thermal management comes in. It's just the things that we experience, probably every day with our laptops, our phones, iPads, everything else that we have. And what they really want to do is they want to protect, they want to prevent that overheating because in data centers, you want things that run 24 hours a day, 7 days a year, 365. There's no time off for these poor data centers. They are really working like all the time. And the other aspect of it is optimization. So that's what they need to really perform well. If, just like when we're hot and we don't like walk as fast, the same thing is true for data centers. And other aspects we have to think about, or like people think about when they're focusing on cooling and thermal management, is uh, how much energy it uses. Of course, the more energy we use, the more things it costs, the more impact we have. And the next one sort of on sustainability. So that impacts the emissions that we make, to the air, to the water, um, climate change, all these different things are all related to this concern about heat management. And so they, as a result, you have a lot of scalability, and that relates to, again, the size of the data center, like overall, the racks within the data center. Sometimes, they're at the highest end, the new ones, but some of the older ones are going to be a mix of uh, lower density racks and higher density racks. And the whole goal of this cooling thermal management is to manage that system. Um, then, as you'll see here on this chart, sorry, I have to get this one. The 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 chart that's the kind of the lighter green on the right, that is how much is energy consumption is for computing power, and almost equal to that in the darker green is how much is for cooling systems. And so the energy to run a data center and the energy to cool it is about the same, and in total about 80% compared to all the other activities that are happening within a data center. And then here, this is, I think, interesting because it shows how the rack density, which is at the top there, influences the kind of cooling options that are being used in that system. So at the low end, you have what we've been using in, I don't know what to say the past, but that we're transitioning out of, and that is air cooling itself. But then the next step up is active rear door heat exchangers. Then we go direct to chip, where it goes, the chip itself has a cooling option with it. And then immersion cooling. And all of these have different costs, different ranges, things like that. And you can participate in any part of this process from a manufacturing standpoint. This is another way of looking at this is like where the life cycle impact, and what that means is like what impact do you have on the environment in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, energy demand, and water consumption relative to these different technologies. And you'll see there's like obviously it makes a difference the degree to which if the energy source for the cooling comes from a renewable source or if it comes from the grid. So here's one of the newer technologies, which is called liquid to chip. And you'll see here that you have the server down here, and then you have a cold plate that is, like on top of the circuit board within the server. And then how there's like a circulation um, that goes from the heat generated over to kind of rejecting the heat. And then there's like a water pump that kind of goes through and provides liquid that helps cool that chip. This one, again, is sort of showing the power relationship between all that, between chips that are air cooled and chips that are liquid cooled on the right. And you'll see CPUs, GPUs, super chips, and then AI chips kind of being in the center, and then the different kinds of racks. And how all that impacts the potential, really, for liquid cooled data centers to reduce server cooling power by 90%, electricity by 40%, and then noise, which I might remember I talked about at the beginning, by 55%. So as with all of these, we have a component list. And I have these organized by the different categories that I've talked about earlier. So you have the components, you have the NACS code, description, and then how it is used in the data center. So there's like 5 or 6 pages of this in the report itself. And here's the data centers, trade associations, and other organizations. There is the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute, the Air Movement Control Association, ASHRAE, which is probably the biggest one, I would think, and then the Associated General Contractors of America, the Association for Computer Operations Management, the Data Center Coalition, and the Global Immersion Cooling Association. So if you're a manufacturer and you're interested in getting more information, uh, I've looked at the websites for like all of these, and they all, have some portion of their activities that are focused on data centers. So it's a good way to network with people and to find out what's going on. On the right, we've mentioned this in the past, but just emphasize it again. Then the DOE Office of Manufacturing Energy Supply Chains, should the government get into operation again, might be a source of funds for you. And I believe Matt yesterday, maybe he can talk about this as well, mentioned that there's also these grants that this activity has available for some of you who are interested in these activities. So again, this is the same final thoughts for all of these, but I think it's always good to remember that these AI data centers are an emerging market for small and medium-sized energy electrical manufacturers. Sustainability policies are going to really drive new equipment purchases from the perspective of the data companies. The Trump administrations may counteract some of that. We really need to be in a sprint to capture the opportunity at the regional, national, and global level. And then here's how to connect with me, particularly on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And I'm happy at this point to close up and answer any questions people might have. And then Matt, maybe you want to go ahead and talk about those grants that you mentioned yesterday.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Thank you. And again, please submit more questions. I see we have a few. So as Debbie mentioned, through the Energy and Manufacturing in Appalachia project, we do have some mini grants, and I just put the link in the chat there. So if you're a manufacturer working in across our 156 counties, most of Pennsylvania, Eastern Ohio, Western all of West Virginia, Southern Tier New York, we do have a mini grant project. If you look and get into the supply chain, the grant can provide up to $10,000 of a $20,000 project, so 50% match with a max of 10,000. So anything you're looking at to engage in the supply chain, whether it be new product technology, you're looking to engage in some of the trade groups that Debbie mentioned there, reach out to us. We'll be glad to help you, walk through that and see if that's an opportunity. So with that, we do have a couple questions in here. I do see. I'll read them for everybody since I can't see. So Debbie, see here. So will chip level cooling solutions, which can deliver precise temperature control without water evaporation, eliminate the water use concerns in the near future? I believe these are considered closed loop systems.
So the answer to that is they'll make it better, but not quite all the way. And the reason why is because there are other like needs that these systems have, beyond just the chip cooling part. So that's just only the rack part of it. So you have your racks and of your devices and things like that. And those do, they definitely will help for that portion of the demand on an energy center. But still, overall, you might remember that the data center as a whole still has to have cooling, right? So you still are going to need some water for these things, but they will make life much better than it is today.
And I think yesterday we hosted an event that Debbie was at and spoke, and I think we learned a lot about how fast this technology is increasing. I know Debbie has some stuff in the report talking about the racks and just how they're growing and power needs. And as you saw in the couple of charts in there, you're looking at the new technologies and say those upper limits in terms of how they can be quoted, and they're pushing those upper limits without a doubt.
Right. And I say that's another important thing to understand is that, like this particular technology, the chip works for this level of rack, right? But they're gonna like keep on increasing those things as the more and more as they get. So the cooling technology is going to have to keep up with the rack technology. And that, I'm not saying it won't happen, but I am saying that, it's never going to be a perfect world. And although I wish it was.
There's another question here. It's about the power side, which you've studied too. So, do you think these data centers can reasonably be powered by intermittent sources? Aren't baseload energy resources really necessary to meet the 24/7 demand?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, on the energy side, it really depends. Like, let me put it this way. An emerging energy source, for data centers is nuclear. Okay. So nuclear is not an intermittent source, but like everything, it has to go offline every once in a while. In fact, I actually visited the nuclear plant well, I think it's still in operation here in the Pittsburgh area. And it was right next to a coal plant that was at that point moving to natural gas. I'm sure it's natural gas at this point. And it really needed both of them in combination to provide continuous power, right? But if you're looking at, say, like solar power, wind power, things like that, a lot of that's going to depend on energy storage, right? So, the degree to which we can improve our ability to store energy, then we are also going to be able to rely on renewable sources. So nuclear is not considered a renewable source. So basically right now, the majority is coming from natural gas. I certainly think that natural gas is going to be like a bridge fuel for like quite a while, right? Then, we have our emerging sources. Uh, well, we have long-term nuclear, which is also a big player. And then we have, new nuclear, small modular reactors, which have not really gained footing yet, but it looks like maybe within the next 5 years, because of primarily data centers, they're going to, really maybe become part of what it is that we have. So yeah, the bottom line to your question is, I mean, it's and Matt probably, who's an energy expert as well, might throw in his 2 cents, is that baseload energy, like natural gas, is definitely very important. particularly in this transition phase. But it does not mean, just like with cooling itself, as technologies improve and energy storage improves, that we can't rely on intermittent sources as a source of energy. What do you think, Matt? Do you agree?
Yeah, I would say, looking at what we've seen, I would say in the last year from, the companies also who are focused on the renewables, that's what we're talking about. And we're seeing they're switching to right now, looking at natural gas and, low carbon natural gas. They're seeing that the speed to market, while, as you mentioned, battery storage technology catches up, nuclear catches up, technology with, some of the renewables gets to the point where they can, reasonably, power these centers. But you're right, you need the 24/7, 365. I think we heard yesterday the comment that there 1 second of downtime, you can fry these chips. So there's no question they need these reliable baseload power sources. And like you said, for now, as we're seeing, it's an all of the above approach, but
Yeah.
definitely from the June conference or July, I think with Senator McCormick, was nuclear, natural gas are getting the lion's share right now, but the other technologies down the road will, geothermal renewables will play a part of this. Because the one thing is, these data centers, as we're learning, are using a lot of power, more power, and they're continuing to seems to be getting bigger and using more. So it's going to
Mhm.
take all of the above approach, especially if we get into looking at other needs for baseload and power generation.
Yeah, and I say, like when I was like working in the Obama administration, is that it had an all of the above energy strategy. I just saw just I can't remember what it was, but just like in a news article just this past week, that one leader says, hey, just to meet the energy demand, right? It's going to
Right.
be need an all of the above energy strategy. So we can't rely only on, say, natural gas. We still need everything else.
Yeah. So a couple more questions here. I see there so are there advantages to siting data centers in the Northeast U.S.? We've heard that cooler ambient temperature during winter will reduce energy demand for cooling, unlike in Texas and other southern locations.
Yeah, my take on it is that definitely this part of the country has a lot of advantages over the Southwest. In terms of data center location. One is availability of water, which, even though it does vary a bit, certainly the Appalachian region has more water than these others. I'm from Texas, so I understand this. Um, and then also, there's things related to temperature and these other activities. But don't forget, like these places have to maintain a constant temperature, right? So, like, hey, we get -15 here in Pittsburgh. Well, that means then you have to, like, the warming has to kick in, right? So you still have to maintain a constant temperature, right? So I do think that the Northeast, has a lot of advantages over the Southwest. But there's also places like I do work in the Southeast, like North Carolina, South Carolina, that are kind of in between that I can see are also, like a reason people are interested in that part of the country as well.
So this question on the water says Pennsylvania is a water-rich state with more waterway miles than any state but Alaska. Additionally, we have seen significant retirements of coal-powered electric generation, which has led to a significant decrease in water demand. Since natural gas power plants need less than 5% of the water of coal, doesn't this help to alleviate water demand concerns to some extent?
I don't think that really helps that much because the portion of data centers that are fueled by coal has is low, right? It's not very high. It's always been primarily natural gas, for this part of the country at least. And so coal is just it's just not a big player. So, yes, it's nice that natural gas uses less water than coal, but I don't think it's going to be that big of that's big of an issue.
Okay. This might get, I haven't heard this. So China is investigating submersion technology for cooling underwater AI data centers, some offshore near wind turbines for power. Is the US investigating such technology?
Well, all I know about this topic is that I think I saw an article like on this, the many things that I see on AI data centers, and people are being very innovative, right? So, as far as I know, the US is not looking at this particular technology. But it wouldn't surprise me if somebody, at some lab at some university is, right? Because like I said, it's a big issue. And it's probably, I would say, in the data center world, that this is where there's the most variation in approaches, is when it comes to heating, cooling, like all these different kinds of management activities. So it would not surprise me if that was the case.
Well, I just put in our link one more time. I did see many of you downloaded the report. I appreciate that. But I would encourage you to also bookmark that site because we do have, as mentioned, Debbie, we have a fourth seminar or webinar coming up. That report will be out, I think it's October, November 16th.
I
Something
kind of
like
think it's
that.
November because
Yeah,
I'm heading off to Africa for
that's
for
right.
a good portion of mid-October
Yeah,
to mid-November, and I think I'm doing it like the week I get back, so I think it's like around the third week of November.
right,
So it will be do it, and though it's possible that the report itself can be published while I'm away, even though the webinar on it won't be until November.
right,
But like I said, I encourage you to go to the AI data center portion of the website, and then you'll see everything. You'll see all the slide decks, all the videos for the two that I did before, and then all the reports, other than this last one that's about steel. But
right.
it's been written. It's just got to be formatted.
Yes. So again, take a look at them, download them. Keep I said, bookmark that. We'll be doing additional events, not just on supply chain with data centers. Take a look at some of the other ones. I know we talked about nuclear. We do have that report out there. Penn State University put that together. And as new events come up, new reports, we'll list those on the website there as well because we do have some other tech or other events, in-person, online webinars that will be coming up here in the near future. So again, Debbie, I really appreciate your time, your expertise, taking the report and the questions. And with that, I'd like to wish everybody a safe day and thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the questions. Bye bye, everybody.